All right, week 4, story time, and this time I want to talk about my absolute favorite class that I ever took in high school. It was called Outdoor Education, and for our high school it was actually a class. It wasn't just a club, so you got credit for it, and the teacher that taught it was an absolute legend. His name was Mr. Wilson. Everybody called him Willie, and it was a class where basically we learned about the outdoors, we learned about camping and survival and how to build fires and how to pitch a tent and how to, like boil water and forage for food and identify different kinds of trees and different stuff like that. And it was an absolutely incredible class. My most favorite memories from school are all things that happened like outside of the classroom. So anything that happened that was out of the ordinary, like worksheets and the boring day-to-day stuff from school, it doesn't strike a chord. It doesn't, capture your inspiration, and it's boring and it's frustrating and it sucks. And so this class was like almost nothing but those fun out of the class experiences. And so we got to do fun stuff. We went to a place called Camp Northern Lights. We went to Algonquin Park. We did, I feel like we did ice shacks and like igloos and stuff like that. And a whole bunch of other stuff. And it was just the most incredible class. And part of what made it so special was the teacher. Mr. Wilson was a one-of-a-kind teacher, and he's really built up this relationship with the kids. And when he had his retirement actually a few years ago, the amount of kids from high school that came back for his party was unbelievable. And the amount of lives that he inspired and kids that he really just made feel special and wanted to come to school and wanted to learn was really evident at his retirement party, when just hundreds and hundreds of kids came back to pay their respects to Mr. Wilson. And part of what made him so special was there was no student left behind. And it was never done in like a patronizing way where you felt like you were being centered out and kids were picking on you and the teacher had to step in to fix the situation. It was just something that he really made part of the class. And one of the coolest parts about the class was everybody in the class got a nickname. I don't know if he explicitly ever made it like that, but it's just everyone ended up with a nickname. And if you didn't have one, you were just like, oh, what's my nickname? And it would eventually come out. And he just made everybody feel special and really kind of took the time to get to know kids on a personal level. And he would never, outside of the classroom, it's high school, right? So there's cliques and there's like the cool kids and the jocks and the band kids and the choir kids and the Dungeons and Dragons kids. And something that really struck me one day in the cafeteria at high school, I can't remember what grade I was in. I want to say it was like maybe grade 11. It's like everyone divides into their little cliques and you sit at the tables and everything. I know personally, like when I was in high school, I would like walk past the cafeteria and like glance and see who was sitting where and figure, all right, where can I sit so I don't have to walk down to the cafeteria and wonder, do I have a place somewhere? Is my table of friends full? Where the hell am I going to sit? And I remember one day watching, and it was the table, and I don't mean this to sound rude, but like there were different groups, and there was the group of kids that kind of didn't quite fit in, but they all sat together. And so that like even within that, they had their own place. But even within that group of kids, there was still a pecking order, and there was still like the coolest kid at the table and the least cool kid at the table. And they still made fun of each other. And like, it was just really crappy to see that it was like in the order of the school in general, there was a pecking order and a stratus of the most popular to the least popular. But even at the table of the least popular kids, there was still the least popular kid out of the least popular kids. And that was heartbreaking to see, because it just sucked. It was like, man, this is the place where they get to fit in. And there was even still some kids that felt like they didn't even fit in at that table. But so that was outside of this classroom. But in Mr. Wilson's class, nobody was left out. Nobody was left behind. Being exclusive and being mean and picking on people just wasn't tolerated, and it starts at the top. And I feel like everyone's had the same experience, or most cases it would be in like gym class potentially, or on the opposite end of the spectrum it would be in something maybe like biology or science, where in gym specifically it would be like the jocks get special treatment, the hockey players, or soccer, depending on whatever the gym teacher's preferred sport was when they were potentially in high school, or whatever the most popular sport was at the school. And if one of those kids was picking on a not so sporty kid in class, a lot of the time it kind of just gets swept under the rug, and the teacher isn't necessarily exclusively okay with it. Some of them were, but it just wasn't shot down. It was kind of like the teacher would snicker and laugh and kind of like, oh, don't do that. But it's like, you already laughed. You already kind of made it obvious that it was like, that jerk said something and you thought it was funny. And that never really quite sat right with me. And so, like I said, in Mr. Wilson's class, it wasn't like that. It just, right from the top, right from the get-go, if anyone ever said anything, he would put a stop to it. And just, it was like we were all on the same team. All of those cliques and all those borders and boundaries really faded away in that class. And a big part of it was because like there was so much collaborative work and so much teamwork and things that you had to do, and weird little skill sets that weren't necessarily beneficial in normal school would be beneficial in this program, where it was like, you know, you might be trying to identify different insects or identify different trees or learning how to start a fire, and everyone has different interests. And so like one kid might really be into insects, and so he was the rock star of that particular day because he was able to identify all that stuff, and therefore your group won a challenge or something. Whereas like that skill set wouldn't have normally paid off. Or someone that was outdoorsy and was able to start a fire might not have been a great hockey player, and so it was like that skill set won out that day. And so it was really neat to see how in that class all those barriers kind of got broken down, because you got to rub elbows with all the people that you wouldn't necessarily hang out with or talk to on a daily basis, because you were put in these groups. And it was never, all right, here's the 5 team captains, pick your players, and there's always kids left behind. It was like, no, Mr. Wilson would go in and he would structure teams in a way that he would put those kids together that wouldn't normally be together, and the way that they would end up working together was just, there was something really magical and really cool about it. And so outdoor ed was just this absolutely unique class in the sense that it really brought out the best in everybody. And it isn't that by nature. Like I said, it was really led top down by Mr. Wilson, and because he led that way, it was like you took it upon yourself to keep going with that, because you respected him so much that you would then exemplify that with everybody else. And so if you saw that happening, you would kind of playfully step in and be like, hey, no, come on, man, let's get it done and let's go. And it was an incredible class. And not to mention the fact that like I love the outdoors anyways, and so the whole experience was just incredible. Like I said, we got to go to Algonquin Park, we got to go to this place called Camp Northern Lights, and snowshoeing and cross-country skiing and all these different cool things, and it was just a blast. And that's something that I want to try and bring into what I'm doing here, and have, whether it's a weekly thing or a monthly thing, kind of have a get-together somehow. I'm not 100% sure how to do it yet. I want to do it with adults as well, where it's like, like a bonfire and a steak and wine night or something, where you have a dozen people get together and you cook over the fire and just hang out and talk and have a drink, and it'd be awesome. And then with high school kids, it'd be a lot of fun to, like I said, it's these neat experiences where you get to work collaboratively with either people you wouldn't normally work with or people of the opposite sex, that like you get to have these things where you're working towards a common goal. So there's not that awkward, what do we talk about or what do we do? It's like you get to just work together, and you don't necessarily have to talk. You just get working on a joint task, and it facilitates the conversation, and so you don't have to work so hard at it. With technology being what it is now, like people don't talk the same way they used to or interact the same way they used to. And I see it with my own kids, and it's kind of funny, where it's like, Dad, people don't call each other on the phone anymore. We text. Like, who calls somebody without texting them first to give them a heads up that you're going to call them? And that's normal now. That's not, it's just that's crazy to me. It's a generational thing. As kids, we grew up, you would just go and knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey man, let's go play manhunt or capture the flag. And now it's like there's almost this, you have to call or text first to give people a heads up. It's kind of interesting. So I'm excited about being able to teach some of the outdoor ed stuff on here, and like how to build a fire, how to split wood, you know, survival stuff and water purification and cool stuff like that. And then potentially actually have hands-on get-togethers where we get to put it into practice, whether we do stuff, you know, like go out to an actual campground or go to the Sleeping Giant National Park or anything like that. Or just something as simple as just going into the forest around here and kind of doing different stuff like that. I think it would be really cool. And I'm excited about starting stuff like that too. So the takeaway from that is just love the outdoors. I love the idea of working together and having a common goal to attack. And yeah, super pumped. So yeah, that's week 4, outdoor ed, best class ever. Mr. Wilson, best teacher ever. Appreciate that. You were so inspiring. So looking forward to passing that on and paying it forward.